Yeah, young women are so important in public life. And I would say to so many young women that I know that don't underestimate your ability and your contribution. Don't wait to be asked. Take your power and knowledge and trust your instincts to be part of the institutions that you're in. And I also say a lot to young women in my life, know that your career will be long. You know, it's not 10 years or 20 years for many of us who are workers throughout our lives. It's often a 40-year experience at work. And so I encourage people to take time off, for example, if they've got a sick parent or a young child. Try not to do everything at once. It's a long haul and enjoy it along the way. A famous woman who I like very much, the first leader of our Australian trade union movement, was a woman called Jenny George. And Jenny was a wonderful model to lots of women like me who were activists in the union movement. And she said, you can have everything, but you can't have everything all at once. You just cannot be the mother that most of us want to be, well-rested, attentive to our kids, for example, and also be, at the same time, you know, exhausted through long hours of work. We've got lots of jobs in Australia, probably, you know, in many other countries as well, that are now long hours jobs, very demanding, really hard to be a carer and a worker in those positions. So we have to change those norms and make it possible to be both a worker and a carer, but don't feel as a young woman that you need to do everything all at once. Take time off. Get yourself into a job that suits you with an employer that accommodates your needs. Don't stay in an unhappy workplace with bad cultures. Shop around for your jobs, but also speak up and don't be silent at your tables. And from many of the young women in my life, I know that there's no chance they'll be silent. And I just strongly encourage them to step up in public life and in their workplaces and communities. Women are so important to running a country well. They're so important to an effective parliament. They're really important to running everyday institutions in our communities. And we need women and their voice across the governance of our society. And we have to stop doing some really basic things. Like we have to make women safe in Parliament. We have to make sure there are lots of women there who can support each other and change the cultures of our Parliament. We have to stop the kind of very toxic masculinity that we often find in places where there's a lot of drinking, where there's a lot of brotherhood socialising, which is excluding of women. And we have to change the practices in our public institutions so that the activist voices, whether they're parliamentarians or leading demonstrations or responding to issues like improving our care system, all of those things require the voices of women, and we will only see women there if the cultures are more positive towards women, more supportive, where childcare is available, where sexual harassment isn't common, and where things like the pay gap are narrowed. I know a lot of people in my life, in the last 30 years of my working life, so many women, for example, have entered fields like engineering, mining, occupations where women weren't in large numbers. Until relatively recent. They still remain a very small minority in some workplaces, but we are educating women in increasing numbers. What we need to do is not only educate women, but actually change the workplaces that they step into so that incredibly smart engineer who comes out of a university in this town or anywhere in the world can safely make a career, including stepping away from the workplace to do that other essential work, which we want women to do, which is to have children and to rear them with their partners and be able to step back into a career cycle that really makes the most of their personal investment and our public investment in their knowledge through their learning and education. So we really need to have much more of a life cycle approach to education and to work. People who are serious carers, and that actually is most of us over our life course, have to be able to step in and out of work, in and out of education with support. And that means changing our cultures, changing our practices, enabling paid parental leave, giving good childcare, looking after old people by letting people take time off. These are all things that are essential to change in our society, if we're going to see women taking the place that we really need them to across our public institutions.